We get off the plane, all the brothers are there. We see the love. We're overwhelmed by just the quantity of the brothers that are there, their smiles, their expressions. As the days went on, it was clear they were just looking for what we needed. And it was more than, just giving us some food and spending some time with us. There were so many other things that they did that covered every one of our needs when I'm not sure that their own needs were being covered at times. They knew they just wanted to be there, and they'd figure out the rest when they got there. And that really impressed myself and my wife. I do remember one night getting back to the hotel, and we had a moment to just really think about what we'd seen that day, and started to ask ourselves if we'd ever gone to the same extent. Where I'm from, I feel we tend to stick with what we're very comfortable with. I realized that I really had unknowingly been putting limits on hospitality because of what I was comfortable with, because of the culture where I grew up. Whereas the experience in Ukraine helped me to see that we can break that barrier down so much faster. We could definitely feel that this was what Jehovah's view of hospitality was. It was about looking for what others need and filling those needs.
Of course, the influence of the culture doesn't go away overnight. We still need to work hard on it. We still have to change, because traces of the culture can still be left over. But I realize we definitely need to get rid of it.
If we always put Bible principles ahead of our local culture, we strengthen our precious Christian unity.
If you say so, Mark Sanderson, we've been watching Wesley Deboka from Canada and Agop Donikoglu from Turkey. Apologies if I've mispronounced either of those names. And we're talking again about culture. This has already been touched on earlier in the episode. Mark Sanderson really wants to get across this message that the organization comes first and individual culture and customs come second. If your culture conflicts in any way with what the organization expects of you, you need to ignore it and put it to one side. And this, again, is disingenuous when you compare the message that's given to people joining the organization. Oh, we're accommodating of all cultures. You can totally explore your own cultural background and keep your cultural identity as a Jehovah's Witness. But when the rubber meets the road, it turns out it's not quite that simple. The culture has to give way if it conflicts in any way with Jehovah's Witness teachings. Now, I happen to think that the examples they've given are pretty poor. You would think they'd come up with something a little bit more concrete where there's a real dilemma at stake. But instead, the examples they're giving essentially amount to Wesley from Canada saying, oh, well, in my culture, we're not hospitable enough. Really? I'm sure there are many Canadians who are very hospitable. It's like anywhere. Some people are more hospitable than others. And that's apparently the culture that he had to leave behind. It's not a particularly compelling example, is it? And then you have Agop in Turkey. If you watch the whole thing, he's describing how in Turkish culture, they place a great emphasis on experience, especially in the context of recommending whether someone should become an elder or not. And he's had to learn in recent times to appoint younger men as elders, whereas his Turkish culture apparently pushes him towards saying, well, let's wait until they accrue more experience. Again, it's hardly a huge dilemma, is it? Or it's hardly a convincing example of where culture and religion might clash. What about examples of where people have joined Jehovah's Witnesses and had to give up practices or traditions that are linked in some way with false religion? That's really what we're talking about here, or that's what Mark Sanderson wants to get across. But they're going for the easy targets. They're going for nice, easy stories to just kind of sneak in this message that the organization comes first if there are any cultural issues. And just a brief word on the international convention that's discussed, the Ukraine International Convention. I've spoken about international conventions before and how a whole different set of rules seems to apply when it comes to entertaining delegates. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please check out my Dancing for Jehovah video. Tibor will hopefully provide a thumbnail if he's feeling gracious. But yeah, I'm not sure. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure the Ukrainian people are incredibly hospitable. I'm sure lots of people in lots of countries are hospitable in their own way. And I can believe that hospitality is more conspicuous in some cultures than others. But when we're talking about an international convention and the hospitality that gets arranged for delegates, we're talking about kind of a shady arrangement whereby delegates get chosen by the organization. They have to fill out a form that asks them questions about their track record. They have to be approved by their elders, and their elders get to veto their attendance of the international convention if they've been involved in any bad behavior or bad conduct. And in order to go to these international conventions, in many cases, they have to part with vast amounts of money, and the money goes to the organization, and the organization brokers deals with hotels and airlines. The organization gets to keep hold of the money, and who knows what margin they take in terms of donations. So it's all a little bit, well, the best we can say is that the International Convention arrangement lacks transparency and seems to exploit a desire on the part of wealthy Jehovah's Witnesses to be in the presence of governing body members. Because when we're talking about international conventions, that's really the only thing that's special about them. The fact that you are guaranteed to hear a talk or multiple talks by a governing body member. It's a little bit of a racket, in my personal opinion, that to get that privilege, it's not based on how good you are as a person or how seriously you take the religion. A lot of it is down to, are you willing to fill out this questionnaire about your personal life, and are you willing to part with quite a lot of money?